And we're live. Welcome everybody here to the Lakers Lounge. I'm Anthony Irwin. Today joined by you guys. The plan for this one is going to be talking obviously about the breaking news, that being that the Lakers and Anthony Davis have agreed to a 3-year max extension. Great news all around. We are going to talk about that. And then as we get closer to the end of the show, we will squeeze in some of your questions about it. So get those questions here in the comments of the YouTube channel, and make sure you guys are subscribed on YouTube. Right, it's right there wherever it shows up. Hit that subscribe button, and yeah, let's talk this out. So, Adrian Wojnarowski of ESPN broke the news initially that the Lakers and Anthony Davis have agreed to that 3-year, $186 million extension. It is the most money that any NBA player will have made per year ever. And it kind of makes sense for everybody involved. The $62 million. It's a lot of money. Now, I would imagine it's probably going to be in like the $58 million range at the beginning of the contract and then escalate from there. So the last final year of his deal will be, the big one. But we'll also kind of see what the structure is as we learn more about it. But I think I know that people are going to be a little nervous about paying Anthony Davis through to 2028 because of some of the injury concerns. I would say to those people that you don't really have much alternative here. The other part of this too is that AD and the Lakers. It's just good to see that this happened as quickly as it did. Like that was my first takeaway. Today is the first day that he could sign this extension, that the Lakers could offer this extension, and it got done right away. And it's just good to see that, at least in this regard. Now, it's easy to be on the same page with an organization that wants to pay you that kind of money. But still, at the end of the day, it is good to see that the Lakers and Anthony Davis were able to come to this agreement as quickly as they did. And, as Woj writes here for ESPN, from now through to 2028, the Lakers will have paid Anthony Davis a total of $270 million. Good God. I needed to be taller. Mom, Dad, it's on you. Why couldn't you have made me 6'8", 6'9", 7 feet? I know it doesn't help that my mom is 5 foot nothing and my dad was only 6'2", but still, come on. I think my initial thought, like I said, is on the fact that this got done as quickly as it did. From what I had heard, there was never any doubt about this. I think maybe initially at the very beginning of the offseason, there might have been some conversations as far as like how comfortable the Lakers might be tying themselves to Anthony Davis for that far into the future. But then you see like Jaylen Brown's contract gets done, and Anthony Davis is still at that point in his career and will be at that point, I think, for at least a few more years here, still at that stage where he is going to be, a good enough player that you don't even think about. Like, you watch him and you say, like, all right, yeah, that, especially when he's healthy, that's a max player. Now, how often he's going to be healthy, that is certainly a question and certainly a concern moving forward. But he isn't unhealthy enough that the Lakers wouldn't give him this deal. I honestly think some of the injury stuff is somewhat overblown. He did play, other than the pre-scheduled nights that he didn't play on the second night of a back-to-back, and then occasionally, there was the every other game AD kind of thing. That again I thought was kind of overblown. but he is still very much, when he is healthy, when he is right, when he is focused, one of the most impactful two-way players in the NBA. Certainly one of the best, if not the best, defensive presence in the NBA when he has it really going. And that's the kind of play that you give a max. That's the kind of player that you give max money to, and you don't really worry about it that much. Also, importantly, here from an asset management standpoint, the longer that this hung over everybody's heads, and the longer that this kind of carried out and everybody kind of drug their feet on it, not to say that nobody ever drug their feet. It got done within hours of the first moment that this could be offered and agreed to. But the longer that this went forward, the more that doubt kind of creeps in about the relationship that AD and the Lakers have. And also importantly too, if this doesn't get done and he goes into this season potentially able to opt out and become a free agent as soon as next year, all of the momentum that the Lakers made coming off of last year would fly out the window, because you would be playing this season with the notion of, is AD focused? Is he committed to the Lakers? Is he, how long is he going to be a Laker? And that it's good to know that in no way, shape, or form is this something that anybody was ever particularly worried about. Again, the last I spoke to anybody about this was maybe a couple days ago in preparation for today. And the response that I got was, yeah, this is just going to get done. It's not a matter of if, but when, and it'll probably get done pretty quickly. And so it did surprise me how quickly it got done. Meaning, again, I think he could first be offered at beginning of business today, and it got done. It's 1:15 back home, and it was not. This wasn't a Jaylen Brown situation, right? Like Jaylen Brown. The talk of Vegas whenever I was talking to anybody even remotely close to the Celtics was like, this is a little awkward, right? Like this is, given his quotes, given Jaylen Brown's quotes over the last season or so about like playing in Boston and being at the center of trade rumors and the city of Boston's relationship with black athletes. That got a little awkward, right? And yeah, the response was, yeah, this, I don't know if I would ever call it tenuous, the negotiations between Jaylen and Boston, but it certainly took quite a while for that to take place, and he didn't get the player option that I would imagine he was looking for. In this case, it reminds me of the way extensions would go down between the Lakers and Kobe, where you knew that he was extension eligible or you knew that he was contract eligible. And I remember one offseason, they asked, I believe it was Mitch about it, and Mitch never says anything, right? Mitch never was famous for his ability to be asked questions and just talk for a little while and never say anything. And in this case, though, I remember this pretty distinctly. They asked Mitch, I forget which offseason it was. It wasn't the $48 million deal, but it was like 2 contracts or so before that when Kobe was in his absolute prime. And they asked Mitch about it, and they were like, are you nervous at all for the negotiations that you're going to have with Kobe? And he's like, well, you see, the thing with our negotiations with Kobe this summer is I made him from Boston. This summer is going to be, we write the number on the paper. It's the max that we can offer, and we feel pretty comfortable with offering Kobe Bryant that amount of money at this stage of his career. He's still one of, if not the best players in the NBA, and we feel confident in our ability to compete with him at that number. and it was just done. It was just, and in this case, he obviously didn't have Rob Pelinka going out there and saying like anything to that extent, but behind the scenes, when you would talk to anybody, it was a very similar message. It was, yeah, you give them the number, you give them that money, and you don't have to sweat out this season. And even more importantly, let's say they play out this season and he opts out at the end of the year, and at that point he is eligible for the full 5-year max at a higher starting point. He was AD there would be a year older, and it'd be for a really long deal. And that is not tension that the Lakers need coming off of the season that they just had. So yeah, all around really good number for AD. And as the cap continues to climb with the new TV money that'll come in and with the increased BRI just in general, that number, by the time you get to, when it kicks in, when he'll be making, I think I saw Alexis grabbed the numbers here, and shouts to Alexis for doing this. Yeah, like I said, that first year, 57.6, so it was like the 58-ish range that I thought he was going to be in. Second year, 62. Third year, 66, basically $67 million. And yeah, I think for what he brings to the table, that is perfectly reasonable. And by the time we get to those actual years of, competition, and with the cap being set there, you'll look at the number that AD will be paid at that year compared to some of the other contracts that go out, then you'd be like, all right, that makes some sense, so long as he stays healthy. And that's why, I had somebody complaining about me or commenting on the feed here that I'm like obsessed with AD's weight. And that's not really the case. I look at it more from the standpoint of like, look, I was just out doing the lawn today, and my lawn slopes pretty hard, where the back of my yard is, about 10, 15 feet lower than the top of my yard. And it's a fairly big yard. And by the time I got done with just the amount that I could do today before my batteries ran out because I waited too long to do the yard, by the time I was done, my knees were like kind of bugging me a little bit. My calves were really burning and stuff. And it's just like, yeah, I need to drop some weight. And as you get older, you start to feel that a little bit more. And in this case with AD, he is reaching that point of his career where longevity is going to be affected by how well he takes care of his body. And, in this case, now that the Lakers are attached to him for what'll be like the twilight of his prime, I would probably assume, it's going to be really important that, he maybe sheds a couple pounds here and there going into the season, and he focuses a little bit more on flexibility and motion dynamics and stuff like that, and how he carries himself even in stasis on the court. Like, those are the things that for a player at this stage of his career, if you're talking about like being productive through the entirety of this extension or the entirety of the next 5 years in which the Lakers are paying him $270 total million, like that is where you are going to really have to focus on getting everything out of your body and preparing your body for the wear and tear that comes with just aging. And I'm really fascinated by how he goes about this. And, even if we extend it beyond the way that he takes care of his body and prepares his body, also basketball wise, like he's going to have to find that shooting touch again. And whether or not he's going to be able to is certainly interesting. I think he should. Like, I don't think he's as bad a shooter as he's been the last couple of years. He hadn't been to this point. He was never at any other time in his career as good a shooter as he was in the bubble. And I'm not expecting him to be that. And I think he shot close to like 40% from 3-point range in the bubble. But I think that like he's closer to that than what he's been the last couple of years. I certainly think so. And the thing to keep in mind with shooting is it's kind of like a golf swing. When you're that long, he has insanely long arms. You know, he's a really big guy. And when you play golf and you are a bigger guy, it takes a lot more to keep everything in the right places as you're going through your swing. And those little tweaks or those little wrong motions that you have get, they expound issues in your golf swing, the bigger that you get. And that's why for a long time, like Fred Couples used to hit the ball really, really far. So you would think like, oh yeah, he's a huge guy. I remember seeing Fred Couples at a driving range randomly when I was like a little bit younger, and I was like taken aback by this guy isn't very big at all. And that golfers have gotten bigger recently. Dustin Johnson's like, legit bigger dude, and they've gotten longer. Tony Finau is another tall guy. And you see some of their swings, and there's a lot going on there. It reminds me of like Brandon Ingram when he was learning how to shoot in the NBA, and Anthony Davis now, where both of those guys have kind of difficult times keeping their elbow tucked in where it needs to be a pretty good shooter, because there's so much arm going on when you're shooting. And for AD, if we're talking about maximizing his output through the entirety of this extension, he's going to have to focus on keeping his body right. And I think really focusing on becoming a better shooter, because like you look at the players who haven't aged well, Dwayne Wade had a pretty rapid slippage, Samsonite. No, he slipped pretty noticeably over the back half of his career because he was never a particularly good shooter. Russell Westbrook, right? We saw with the Lakers that all of the sliding that we saw with him athletically was again expounded by the fact that like he couldn't shoot and never cared to learn to shoot. And you look at the players who have lasted, LeBron James being one of them, like the greatest example of longevity in professional sports ever. He learned to shoot. You look at now last year's the exception, and I really think he had issues with his feet, and I think that's why we saw his shot kind of fall off of a cliff last year. But when you look at his shooting numbers now compared to when he first got into the league when he was healthy, it's night and day. And that ability to shoot, that touch, is really going to extend AD's career. So those are the things over the course of this extension that I'm really going to be focused on if he is going to be a Laker throughout all of it. And like that's kind of the last question here is we know that a lot of these guys like Damian Lillard agreed to the extension and will probably never play a game for the Portland Trailblazers under that extension. And I don't necessarily think that that's going to be the case with AD. I think he'll probably play like 1 year in it. But even still, I do kind of think that the Lakers see this era, this LeBron James AD era as like the Lakers kind of see LeBron and AD as kind of a package deal. So whenever LeBron leaves and however he leaves, I think they kind of see that time as, probably the time to move on from AD as well. And this allows them to do that more on their terms. By the time, if the Lakers do wind up trading AD heading into this extension or in the first year of that extension, this means that the team that he gets sent to will know exactly how long they're going to be, they're going to have him at least, right? And AD at that point will be able to kind of go to the Lakers and say, hey, we agreed to this extension. We have had a good run here. Could you maybe send me home to Chicago or whatever team it is that he would maybe prefer to play for? And because of the relationship that they've built over this time together, highlighted by how quickly this got done, that makes it a little bit more likely that the relationship ends a little bit, fairly smoothly. So, not to say that that is definitely how this is going to play out. If I had to predict it, that's probably what I would predict. But still, it's only because the Lakers are known for kind of making good with these stars. And, in AD's case, if he does go to them and say, hey, could you send me here? I think the Lakers would probably work with him. But I think both sides would probably prefer to see this play out where, maybe he retires a Laker. And if that is how this plays out, then I'd be cool with that too. So let's really quickly answer some questions if you guys have it. So first question I'm seeing in the comments, I'll go with, this is a random one, but okay, sure. Andre GNS writes, Europeans are taking over the NBA, question mark? I don't know. I just think they're more pervasive than they were a few years back. The world, and this is because of, I had a great podcast actually with Jason Maples on this. And we both talked about how the NBA has made it a conscious effort to improve the status of basketball around the world, because they know that they can't compete with the NFL just as like an American sport. So they expanded across the world, and in those countries, in those nations where the NBA has really focused on growing, those countries have gotten better at basketball. And you look back to the 92 Dream Team, and Pau Gasol said several times over the course of his career that his love for the game began with watching those guys play. And, then Pau plays and has the success that he has. And any number of players have since said that Pau's success and Dirk's success and, Vlade and all of these European players who came over here, Drazen Petrovic way back in the day, and even Arvydas Sabonis, although he came over later in his career, those European players, combined with the efforts that the NBA was making, it inspired generations, plural now, of players who said, oh, maybe I can do that. That's a really cool sport. And the thing about Europe in particular, and why I think basketball really resonates there, basketball and soccer have a lot in common. And, Kobe would talk about this all the time about, the notion of runs in soccer and nonverbal communication. And, I've said the story, or I've given this anecdote several times over the course of doing these shows. But when I was a kid, I grew up playing. I'm Mexican. Like, I was like born with a soccer ball. And so when I would go and I would play soccer with, some of my soccer friends, and then basketball season would come around and we would try to be all in the same teams, we would actually have an advantage because we had those instincts, those soccer type instincts to run line and look for the cross and all of that stuff, and the give and goes and all of that. And I think in Europe, where soccer is this like religious experience, players who, see basketball and figured out the connection between soccer and basketball have done really well in basketball. And I think Europe in particular, the reason that you're seeing so much European success is because of that like soccer basketball connection. That's like my unfounded theory anyway. But by the way, it's great. I love the diversity of that we see in the NBA. I love that you have, Giannis, who, comes from Greece and was this unknown player, and Luka plays a very European style of basketball, and I love that, Jokic comes over here and again plays a very European, team friendly style of basketball that has now had the type of success that it has had, which is going to lead to more teams being open to that style of play. And that's great. Like any type of, like, this is, you guys hear me talk about diversity all the time. Diversity of ideas and backgrounds and ways of thinking. All it does is enhances anything that it touches. And in this case, basketball is made better by the presences of Europe and eventually China and Africa and Canada and whichever other nations continue to expand within the sport. All right, next question comes from Alexis, who writes, "What do you think is going to be the ceiling post LBJ era?" Ceiling. Well, I'll put it this way: the Lakers tried the whole build through the draft, tank, and accumulate talent via the draft approach, and obviously didn't really have the patience to see that through, especially once Genie took over and they were able to go get LeBron. It hastened the timeline and it forced them to kind of move off of the gym bus timeline. What we saw though, because of how good the scouting department is that all of those guys have gone on to be successful wherever else they wound up, right? Julius Randle, Brandon Ingram, both have Most Improved Player awards in their recent history. Josh Hart is a big part of the turnaround that we saw in New York. Larry Nance Jr., whenever he was healthy, was a big part of winning wherever he has been too. So, like you see, enough. Lonzo was before he got hurt, one of the most impactful defensive players, and because he was a really good shooter, was like a really cool idea of a 3-and-D point guard who could really, change the way that a team can defend and change the way that teams have to defend Chicago. Fortunately, he got hurt, and we haven't been able to see him carry forward with that success. But whether it's building through the draft, which I don't think they'll try to do, or trying to acquire a star and supplement that star's talent with draft type players, I think that's probably more the path the Lakers are going to go. And that's the nice thing of learning on the fly here with LeBron, because I do think there was an experience deficiency with the front office initially between Magic and Pelinka. And fortunately, because of these couple years of really learning hard lessons the hard way, I think that they are now more equipped to build past the LeBron era than they were maybe a year or two ago. And that was always an interesting thing that I would talk to Cavs friends about when LeBron was getting ready to leave was, do you think after that second time around, the Cavs as an organization learned what they needed to learn to be successful without LeBron? And there was always some like, maybe, I hope so, And what we have found though is that like they did, right? Like they have been quite successful without LeBron. Not nearly as successful as they were when they had him, but they've been one of the better stories in the NBA, and we'll see what they're able to do this upcoming season. In this case with the Lakers, I think they have learned some stuff the hard way, and unfortunately, that sometimes is what it takes to grow as a person, is learning stuff the hard way, right? We all remember the first time we had a bad enough hangover that we're like, well, never touching that alcohol again, right? That for me is SoCo, where I just never, ever, ever again. And that's probably a good thing that like I, in my late 30s, should not touch SoCo. And for the Lakers, I think it's going to be like, all right, we are never going to touch that type of trade that we made for Russell Westbrook ever again, right? Russell Westbrook being their like SoCo, I guess, in this example. And I think that's important for the process beyond LeBron. So it'll be interesting. I think their ceiling is going to depend on whichever star does wind up becoming a Laker and what stage of their career they decide to do so. And we'll kind of see what that looks like. But for now, though, the biggest news of the day, biggest news, frankly, of the last couple weeks is that the Lakers and Anthony Davis have agreed to this max extension. He will be a Laker, at least contractually, through 2028. And, they were able to do so quickly and, kind of showcase to everybody that they are all on the same page and ready to move forward and build off of last season. So that is going to do it here for this episode of a live and emergency Lakers lowdown, or Lakers. This is a lounge. I never did a swish thing. So that'll do it though for this emergency and breaking episode of the Lakers Lounge. Thank you everybody for tuning in. Again, hit that subscribe button if you guys are watching on YouTube right now. Hit that subscribe button if you're listening on a podcast. Leave me a 5-star review to get to over the weekend. I had to take a break from preparing for Avery's birthday party, which is tomorrow. My little girl turns 4, so happy birthday, Avery. And we will talk to you guys on Monday.